Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class, London edition. What a zechut it is to be here in the Chazak BBM in the Brampton Bet Midrash. A zechut to see how many people are here learning, praying. It's very, very special. We even have a ladies section for the breakfast class this morning. It's very special. Hazaku Baruch to the rabbis, Rabbi Moshe, to Rabbi Yitzi, to Rabbi Nathan, Sammy, to the amazing trustees that are fueling this organization in the most beautiful way, to Johnny, to Miguel. It's unbelievable and a zechut to be able to teach Torah from a place that I left 7 years ago. And Baruch Hashem, I left it and I came back and I saw it 1,000 times more. I want to just share with you what I feel this morning. I'm reminded of the very special Gemara. Gemara talks about how there was a certain fellow who lost his chickens. Anyway, the rabbi sees the chickens outside. What does he do? He takes the chickens in, Hashavat Avedah. He feeds the chickens. There's more chickens. He feeds more chickens. Eventually there's so many, he sells the chickens, he buys them some goats. The goats have children until there's an army of goats, right? Unbelievable. A few years later, the guy comes back the same way. He says, a few years ago I came by over here. I left some chickens on the side of the road. I can't believe it. And the man says to him, he goes, yeah, that's true. I actually found those chickens. He goes, and let me show you where your chickens are. He takes them through to the back of the house, and there's flocks of goats that are the result of all the chickens that were sold, an unbelievable, tremendous osher v'chavod that came from that which he left behind. That's what I feel like this morning. I left chickens, a couple of things, a couple of classes. We had a small center down the road, classes, but amazing things were going on. But leumat, what we have now over here, it's unbelievable. I feel like I'm coming back and seeing Adarim. They should be zochet to go mala in all the unbelievable work that they're doing. And of course, anyone that would like to support the fantastic work that Chazak is doing here in London. This new beautiful Bet Midrash, which is all the time filled with people. It'll be our zechut to count you amongst our supporters here. This morning's Breakfast in the Class is a broadcast coming from the Torah Center, the Daniel S. Loeb Torah Center of the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue of Manhattan. It's sponsored this week by the donors of the Torah Center, Shalom Hazan, in memory of his grandfather and his great uncle. Of course, the year of Breakfast in the Class is also sponsored for Ruth Bat Orfali. And today's breakfast here has been sponsored by Johnny and Odelia. Leilui Nishmat, his wonderful parents, David ben Nisan HaKohen and Shoshana bat Miriam. The Tenishmatam Eden, I know I'm staying by you, so I know how proud they are to be able to see how much your kids have grown, and even how your youngest, Raphael, is walking on the ceiling. Of course, also, today we remember fondly, today is the yahrzeit of Yeheskel ben Naomi, of Izzy Fagan, Alav Shalom. I remember very fondly the Izzy army praying for him, there with him all throughout that time. And to remember that special tikufah in that difficult time, but how the community rallied around you. I'm remembering in the Shiva house, Shir Lamalot, Esaena Ele Harim, very special moments those were. We remember him with such great memories. The music should continue to play Be'ezrat Hashem for many, many years in your family. Of course, for Refuah Shlema of Simcha Bat Naima and Emmanuel Simcha Tzvi ben Leah Shulamit as well. Should see Refuah Shlema Bekarov. And finally, Ariel Moshe ben Hila. Okay, Rabotai, please only answer Amen if you're listening to this live. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyad baro. Let us begin. We have a beautiful idea over here that's being taught to us in the Torah, but if you're not looking, you could completely miss it. And I want to share with you something that's very beautiful. I like to talk about this a lot, and when something really resonates with me, I feel like I have to share it. I feel like I'm not allowed to not tell everybody about it. So much so that Rambam says when a Navi, a prophet, experiences Nivu'ah, a kovesh nibu'atov, someone holds back his nibu'ah, there's a terrible punishment. Hayav mitah. Now, has v'shalom, not to say that I think I'm a prophet, of course not. But my friends, when a person has a piece of Torah, they're not allowed to hold it to themselves. In fact, we say ter chelkenu b'toratecha. A person has a chelek in Torah, a portion in Torah, that if they don't bring it out into the world will never know it. So there are chidushim that you think of, that if you don't say them over to somebody else, they will have been born and died with you. And Am Yisrael will not have that portion, that piece of Torah, ever. In fact, I had this amazing young man came up with a great idea of spreading amens, having everyone say amens. One of his other ideas was to have like a chidush opportunity hotline. If you come up with a great chidush, it's the middle of the night, or you're on a business trip, or whatever, you have no one to share with, you could just push the button, and there's a group of people who are always willing to listen to each other's chidushim. You imagine that? What an unbelievable chabura that would be to be able to have. Okay, so I feel like this chidush is that concept. Now let me share where I'm coming from with this. Before, a tiny bit of an intro in order to understand this idea. There are ideas in Torah that are learned from a micro process of learning. What's a micro process of learning? So as an example, let's say the Torah says a certain word. You're learning a big idea from one word. In Torah, you could even learn a big idea, not just from one word, but even from a letter. But there are times when it's so micro learning that we're not even learning it from a letter, we're learning it from the size of a letter. What am I thinking about? Vayikra. The aleph is aleph ze'ira. It's a small aleph. So the fact that the aleph is this big and it's not this big, that tells you a lesson. What's crazy is in Torah, it can go even smaller than that. Tagin. Rabbi Akiva was able to interpret the letters. They have crowns on them in the Torah. You'll see like little sticks coming out of the top of the letter with like a circle at the top. Those little letter things that come out, they crown the letters. Rabbi Akiva was able to explain why was there a crown on this letter? Unbelievable. So even smaller than a small letter is tagin, is the crown on top of the letter. But my friends, you could even learn from something smaller than tagin. What's smaller than tagin that we learn lessons from in the Torah? Sorry? That's not smaller. Huh? Kotzos shel yud. But where do you find that in the Torah? Where do we find in the Torah a limud of something smaller than a tagin? Huh? That's a big chidush. I like that. So it's not even a letter. I like that. That's a nice one. But there's nikudot on top of the word. Where do we have that? By Esav and Yaakov, right? Instead of Vayinash Shekeu, it says Vayinash Shecheu. So it's nakud on Vayinash Shekeu, to tell you that's not what it is. We have other examples like that also by Lot and Avraham. Few examples where there's one dot, like the rabbi said, Kotzos shel Yud, the smallest amount of letter you have with regards to writing on Shabbat is just one mark. Even a dot is like a Yud. So my friends, that's micro learning. But there's also macro learning. Macro learning is when you're learning, as an example, the idea of the whole chapter. What is this perek communicating? Lama nismecha parashazu. How come the parasha of Sotah and Nazir are next to one another? Because haro'eh Sotah bekilkulav, someone sees a woman who in her under the influence of alcohol made the biggest mistake of her life with regards to her relationship with her husband, and she did something incorrect with another man, Yazir atzmo min hayayin. He should decide for himself, you know something, I better stay away. Maybe the reason why God showed me this terrible catastrophe of an experience, of a story, the reason why I saw this is to teach me to behave differently with my own relationship with this. Okay, that's macro learning. With that introduction, I would like to share one pasuk that we're going to learn a beautiful idea from, but not just an idea. We're going to learn a system. Now, I don't know if you've ever learned Torah in this manner, but please tell me if you have, if you haven't. Let me explain what I mean. Sometimes what the Torah is teaching you is not do this, go here, think that. But rather, the Torah is giving you an approach, a system of learning, a system of behavior. And what you're learning from the Torah is a system of dealing with something. A small idea of this might be Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, where Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair gives you that there's 10 steps to be able to experience Ruach HaKodesh. And it's like, it sounds like a listicle on BuzzFeed or something. Top 10 things to do if you're trying to get Ruach HaKodesh. But he's giving you a system. He's giving you a ladder. These are the ma'alot, these are the steps. Zehirut, Zerizut, etc., etc. Today, that's what I want to do with you. I want to build a system. Says the Pasuk, in the middle of Az Yashir. So as an example, you start Az Yashir, we're about, I don't know how many Pesukim in, right? Oziv Zimratia, Yeshua, Zelivan Veo, Romero, Hashem Ish Milchama Amanai Shemo, Makevot Paro, Yiminecha Morin Al-Koach, Ruach HaPecha Ner Mumayim. And in the middle, Ruach HaPecha Ner Mumayim, Nitzevu Kimoned Nozelim, as the walls of the water in the split sea are standing straight. What point is that in the story? That's pretty far along in the movie, isn't it? Right? They're already in. They're already, the Markevot Paro already came through the hot sand. The Jews already in the middle of the water. The water is split and standing up. And who's coming in? Now the Egyptians are coming in. Yochlemu Kakash. Right? It's unbelievable. So we're already talking about people drowning. Following that, what does the Pasuk say? Amar Oyev, Erdof Asig, Achalek Shalal. 5 alifs in a row. Amar, Oyev, Erdof, Asig, Achalek Shalal. So let's translate that first into English. Amar Oyev, the enemy said, who's the enemy? Paro, okay? Amar Oyev, the enemy said, Erdof, I will chase. Asig, I'll catch. Okay, asig means to catch up to something. Achalek Shalal, I will divide the spoils, the booty of this overtaking of the Jewish people with all of my people, all the soldiers, anyone who joined me on this mission. Everyone's going to get a piece. They're going to get a dividend check from this battle. That's literally what it's talking about. But the commentators ask a very interesting question. This does not belong here. When did Paro say to himself, Amar Oyev, Erdof Asig, I should chase? He said that when he was in Egypt. I'm going to chase them, I'm going to catch them, I'm going to overtake them, I'm going to divide the spoils. It doesn't belong here. Says Ramban, what does it mean? Amar Oyev le'amo kishepitem b'devarim. He said this to his nation when he was trying to convince them to join him on the mission. Says the Ramban, "Lama lo nichtav ela she'en mukdam meuchar b'Torah." There's no before, there's no after in the Torah. There's times in the Torah where something is not being said to you in a sequential manner. It's not. It really belongs over here, but actually it's over here. My friends, I'd like to suggest that the Torah was hinting to us something very, very powerful over here. It was communicating who it was that drowned in the water. You know who it was that was kafu teomot b'lev yam? You know who it was who's yochlemo kakash? You know who it was? You know who these people are that are drowning? Paro v'chelo yara bayam. All pesukim that we already said. Umivchar shalishav tu be'u Yam Suf. Says the Torah, I want you to understand who this person is who drowned. Effectively, the Torah is teaching us a process, an approach for how a person deals with something that they hate. There are steps that we have to go through in our life when we come across something that's bothering us, something that's broken, something that's challenging us. How do you overcome that challenge? That challenge might be, as an example, an addiction that a person has. They're addicted to God knows what. A person could be addicted to alcohol. A person could be addicted to drugs. A person could be addicted to gambling. Today we have a problem with gambling that's not for adults anymore. I went into a synagogue once teaching some kids, and a kid came up to me and he said, "Thank you so much for speaking to kids like us about gambling. Nobody talks to kids our age." He says, "I have a gambling problem." Kid's 12 years old. I said, how do you, 12-year-old kid, how do you gamble? What happened? One kid got his mother's phone. On his mother's phone, which is categorized as an adult account, he opened a sports betting profile. And once he opened up a sports betting profile, not only was this kid betting on the sports website, he became a bookie for the whole class. All the kids are coming to him, placing bets on the games. Unbelievable. 12 years old, these kids are. They're not even bar mitzvah, they're not even a man, and they have a man-sized problem. Gambling, for many people, we think it's, you're spending money, you don't have so much money. But a true gambler, the worst problem that a gambler has is not that they gamble away things, is that they treat everything in life as a gamble. And the same way you could gamble with money, you could gamble with family. You become a person who is hot on the risk. There's a thrill of maybe losing. It's an unbelievable thing, that. Guy told me once, he went to Vegas and he lost so much money. I said, you're losing so much money. He says, Rabbi, you don't understand. He goes, it's a machaya to lose money. You don't know how exciting it is. Yeah, it's true. I lost $1,000, but I went and I played. And it was so much. The thrill was great. It was worth $1,000. Crazy people, right? But this is a reality. That's why we have on every corner over here, right? There's more, betting stores on the high streets in London than there are chippy shops. Sorry for all the Americans. Chippy shops are stores that sell fried chicken and French fries. Okay? Now, so a person has a problem like that. You need to solve the problem. A person has an anger issue. Right? That's also a massive issue, will ruin his life. A person has a problem that they're greedy or that they spend too much. These are problems that will ruin a person's life. A person has an issue that they're impatient, that they yell at their children, they yell at their wife. They're judgmental. These are problems that will destroy a marriage, that will ruin a person's career. They're always busy saying to everyone in the office how someone else is terrible. A person who's backstabbing in the office, no one wants to work with them. You'll ruin your own life. So what's the first step if a person wants to take on a problem? Amar oyev. The first thing that needs to happen is where the problem is declared. Amar, he said, he looked at this problem and he said, oyev, you're my enemy. A person thinks to themselves, I'm angry. But actually, that's not how Judaism views it. In Judaism, when a person has a problem like anger, it's not that you're angry. You're gold. You're awesome. You have patience, and you're loving, and you're sweet, and you're kind. The Yetzer Hara is making you angry. You are not angry. Anger is your enemy. One of the problems we had in America under the Obama administration, one of the problems was that he wasn't even willing to call terrorists. He wasn't willing to call it terrorism because it wasn't PC. Maybe because his middle name was Hussein. I'm not sure. But my friends, when you can't call terrorism by its name, you can't fight it. You call them militants, you can't fight them because you haven't declared them to be evil. The first step, Rabotai, when you have a problem in your life, is to call something an enemy. To declare it something that needs to be eradicated. Imagine now, and everyone here is thinking of something that they need to call an enemy right now. By the way, your enemy might not be inside of you. What if it's your husband that's drinking? What if it's your wife that's constantly putting down the children? She's a perfectionist and nothing that they ever do is good enough. You have to declare that perfectionism, oyev. It's tearing my family apart. It's destroying my children. How am I going to solve this problem? The first step in solving a problem is calling that problem by its real name, oyev. I'm going to ask you right now to do this, bishat ma'aseh. I want you to think of something. Let's say I can never get up on time. I'm lazy. I'll tell you, no one's lazier than me. It sounds crazy. I'm a rabbi. I spend a lot of time doing a lot of things. I'm a lazy guy. I don't know. I got to tell you. I'm not a morning man. I'm a night guy. I could power through the night, no problem. But you ask me to be there early in the morning, oh, forget it. I used to be here around the corner, right? This used to be my house right down here on the corner of Green and Bell, right? I got told off by all the English people when I lived here. You can't say the corner of Green and Bell, the corner of Green Lane and Bell Lane. I'm like, do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. So why are we having this conversation? English people, if it's not properly said, shouldn't even bother. I was wondering, by the way, why we don't call this BGBM, just to be proper English people. It should be called Brampton Grove Beit Midrash. Otherwise, they're not going to like. By the way, my friend's not on Brampton now anyway. My friends, we have to come up with a new name for what BBM means. Bnei Beto, Bnei Bait Shel Melech, or something like that. You'll come up with something. My friends, Brent Beit Midrash. Yeah. I'm just imagining, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to outgrow this place. We're going to have a meeting with a estate agent, or we're going to sit down with Johnny. We're going to say, Johnny, we need to move again to a bigger place. We have only one condition. It has to be on a street that starts with B. It's a fantastic place. No, but the name of the street, what are we going to do? So my friends, listen to this. The first thing is calling something an enemy. When I was living over here on the corner of Green Lane and Bell Lane, I used to have people coming to my house on Friday night till all hours. Sometimes they have a knock at the door at 1 o'clock in the morning. I always felt bad. When I left Green Lane, I moved to Shire Hall Lane. Some of you remember my house, 25 Shire Hall Lane. We used to have tons of guests coming. So I had a really fun guy. His name was Lee. You remember Lee, right? Really fun guy. So I moved from that corner house to Shire Hall Lane. He did not know that I moved. So he came Friday night. There's always a party happening at Rabbi Farhi's house. So he comes in, he's knocking at the door 1 o'clock in the morning. Meanwhile, the guy who moved in, right, is sitting on the other side of the door in his bathrobe. He's like, why are you knocking at my door? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. He's like, Rabbi Farhi, stop, I know that's you. And the guy's like, it's not Rabbi Farhi. Go away. And Lee's like, you're such a joker. Open the door already. I know you're playing. Poor guy. He's like, he tells the guy, what was his proof that it was still my house? At the time I had, you guys, no one in America even knows what this is. I had a Mitsubishi space wagon. Remember the old gray Mitsubishi space wagon? Hazit, the guy who rented the house after me, had the same color, same model Mitsubishi space wagon. He's like, I see your car in the driveway. Open the door, Rabbi Farhi. Anyway, he comes to me at my house later with all that, because I was up late every night, right? I had a nisayon. A challenge was, I wasn't a morning person. Hashem, in his infinite sense of humor, made me a rabbi of a Syrian shul, where they only want to get up earlier and earlier and earlier to pray. They came to me like, we want to start an early minyan Shabbat morning. We want to have an early minyan, 7 o'clock in the morning Shabbat morning. I said, why? Hashkama minyan. You want to have hashkama? I said, listen, I'm going to tell you a secret. You want to have a hashkama minyan? No problem. Technically, all minyanim are hashkama minyan, because hashkama just means when you wake up. So whenever you wake up, we'll just call it hashkama. Could I sleep one day in the morning? My friends, not being a morning person for a Ben Torah is an enemy. Are you going to sleep through Shaharit? You're not going to pray Shema at the time? You're not going to pray Amidah? Guy told me the other week, I said the halachot of a person that wakes up late in the morning. He comes up, he corrects me. He says, Rabbi, you know better than me everything else. He says, but I know better than you the halachot of someone that wakes up late. I'm a mumche. That's a oyev. When a person has an enemy, what do we have to do? The president of my synagogue, his name is Soli Asa. He always quotes his father. B'tahbulot, taseh milchama. You have a war to fight. Tahbulot. You have to come up with strategies, with ways of going about that war. So you think, I'm going to wake up. What do most men do? I'm going to wake up early. Tomorrow I'm going to do it. Tomorrow I'm really going to do it. The day after I'm going to start the diet. So we just kind of try and power through with will. A woman is a little bit more adin in her approach. She says, maybe I should go to bed a little bit earlier. Guy still is scrolling the sports scores at 4 o'clock in the morning. Right? The first step is Amar Oyev. When a person declares an enemy, they decide they're going to obliterate that thing. Says Paro, says the Torah, I want you to understand who this person is. This is a person dedicated to your destruction. What's the next step? When we identify something as an enemy, and I want you in your mind to do this now, to think of something that's hurting you in your life. Oyev. I have single people sometimes, they won't go out with anyone you suggest. That you introduce them to a nice guy, they're like, oh, he's so nice. He takes care of you. He's so sweet. They're like, yeah, but he's boring. They break up with him. They want to go with this other guy, very excited, very spicy. The guy's an animal. Break up with him. Right? Being overly picky is an enemy. So first identify it in your mind right now and call it oyev. Say it with your mouth. Oyev. The second thing is erdof. When we find enemies, a lot of times when there's pain in my circle, what do? I try and wipe out the pain in my circle. But I don't solve for the pain itself. So what do? I push the pain out of my space. So as an example, I don't have shalom bayit. What do? I'll spend a little bit less time at home. I'll come home later from the office. I'll go to a wedding with my wife, and the only time we'll spend together the whole night is on the drive on the way there. What do I do with my problem? I move away from it. But you didn't solve the problem. The next step after identifying oyev is erdof. I run towards the problem. If my issue is that I'm fighting with my wife, I have to figure out how to solve that problem, not talking to her less. Oftentimes, that's the challenge, is in identifying what is the source, the origin of this nikuda. My friends, oftentimes, will experience this in a very difficult way. You have a child is misbehaving. So what do the parents do? They discipline the child. They yell at the child. Why? So that he'll behave. Meanwhile, why is the child misbehaving in the first place? Because he's getting no positive attention, and he's craving a relationship with his father. So what does the child do? He acts up, so at least his father will talk to him. Negative talk from his dad is better than no talk at all. So what do? You're screaming at the child, screaming more. Is that going to solve the problem? No. All the kid needed was to be told that you love him, that you respect him, that you see how hard he's working, and the problem would disappear by itself. A person has a challenge with alcohol. The answer is not to not have alcohol on the table. You have a person who's addicted to looking at inappropriate things. So what does the father do? Takes away his phone. Not nice. He catches him doing something inappropriate, takes away his phone. You don't think the kid will find another way? The kid is not, he's gambling. I'm going to take it away. He'll gamble on the screen at home. He'll find a way to get on the computer in the office. You didn't solve the issue until you chased it down. And instead of pushing it away, you confront it in its space. The third step, my friends, and this is a step that most people get wrong, is after attacking a problem, Amar Oyev, erdof, I went to the problem. I found that the person has a problem with self-esteem. The biggest problem I feel of the whole generation now is self-esteem, more than any other problem. The root of what's getting them to do all these things is not what you think it is. A lot of times, that self-esteem will cause a child to go way off. Now you think the problem is he doesn't like Shabbat. Not the problem. Problem is he has friends that are not Shomer Shabbat. All the kids are making fun of him, that he's the one kid in the class that keeps Shabbat or kosher or whatever. So his problem is not with Shabbat and his problem is not with kosher. His problem is with self-esteem. Erdof means to find the nikuda at the heart of the issue. Once a person has identified that, the problem is, after we identify it and we share it and we have a difficult conversation, sometimes we have to learn that we found the problem. There are couples that will come to you and they'll tell you that they don't need therapy. And they do. And it's a long mission to get the person to a place where he agrees, the husband, the wife, that they actually need help in the relationship. You know what happens oftentimes? And this is why sometimes couples stay in therapy for years and years and years. And they have two plots in the cemetery. It's the man and his wife and then the therapist. They're just buried together. My friends, you know why? Because a person, just like a person could be addicted to drugs or alcohol or gambling, a person could also be addicted to problem finding. So not only is your husband or wife, not only are they selfish, now you identify them as a narcissist. And if the guy ever for 2 seconds wants some time to himself, you see, this is your narcissistic personality disorder. The guy's like, can I take a nap? Says the Pasuk, sometimes in vanquishing something, you find the source of it. You're snuffing it out. You're committed. This has to change. This has to stop. But no asig when you found it. And now leave it alone for a second. You want so much that the person should change or that the thing should change. Imagine a guy who loses his temper. So what does he do? He says, I'm terrible, I need to be calmer. And he gets so angry at himself. And he's putting himself down. You know what can happen sometimes? A person could put themselves down so much, says Rav Nachman of Breslov, that they think of themselves like a person who's not successful in anything. And then, once a person thinks that they're a failure, because they had to learn that on the way, erdof, they make themselves into such a failure, they start to believe that they can never fix the problem. Asig means know when you found the problem. Know when you put in the process for change. And now, stick to the process. Don't beat the dead horse. Let the process of change take the amount of time that healthy change actually takes. Because when people are trying to change quick, you change not at all. Amar oyev, erdof, asig. Finally, my friends, and this is the last step, achalek shalal. What is the booty? What is the spoils of war? You have a woman who has finally got her husband to realize that he has an anger issue. You have a husband who finally got his wife to agree that she has a spending problem and that no one in the world needs that many shoes. You only have 2 feet. He gets her to realize she's addicted to retail therapy. They solve the problem. Asig. He backs off. Now, all of a sudden, the guy feels like, for all the suffering he went through, the girl feels like it's payback time. It's me time. I remember once we had a situation where you had family members that were fighting for a very long time. And what were they fighting over? They were fighting over the inheritance. Yaini. How many times does money that a person worked so hard for to be able to give his family a better life, how many times is that money that he built for a better life for his family ruining his family's life? Osher, shamur, liba'alav, lira'ato. There are times when wealth is only a source of destruction for the family. So anyway, you have people, they're arguing over the Yerusha. How much should he get? How much should he get? Here's the kicker. They're not talking for 10 years, for 15 years, for 20 years. Come to the rabbi. The rabbi says, let's build something. You're not going to each other's weddings for your children. You won't go to each other's bar mitzvah. When it's the yard site for your father, you won't say Kaddish in the same shul. So what do you do as a rabbi? You try to make shalom. You finally manage to piece them together. Listen, guys, just for this Shabbat, could you pray in the same synagogue? Could we have a arayat meal together, where you'll sit together in the front row in kavod for your father who passed away? Could we do that? And you did it. And you created shalom. You know what happened? After that finally, we got the tiniest ray of shalom between the family. The guy comes to me after Shabbat and he says, Rabbi, you think now is a good time for us to talk about renegotiating, splitting the Yerusha? I was like, are you kidding me? That's a person who doesn't understand achalek shalal. You have a problem. You solved it. Don't milk the cow yet. Your husband didn't have time for the family, for you. You worked on the problem. You know what's going to happen if you say, you know how much back time you owe me? You know how many things I want to talk to you about? Right? You never give me enough time. And now she comes with a pile like this. We need to go through mail from 1999. What was the guy? He looks at the pile. He says, forget it. I'm out. Achalek shalal. If you try and milk the cow, if you're now putting yourself in scenarios where a person who just got over an anger issue is getting all of his buttons pushed, the likelihood of failure skyrockets. So this, my friends, this pasuk is describing to us how a person who hates something completely vanquishes and destroys it. And by the way, Paro, in saying this here, it's not empty words. Because how did Paro get us in Egypt to be slaves in the first place? He declared us an oyev. Right? The beginning of Shemot, what does it say? Look at these people. Hava nitchakem alo. They're the enemy of Egypt. If a war breaks out, they're going to side with the other side. We have to destroy them. It starts with Paro declaring the Jews an enemy. What does he do? Erdof. He thinks to himself, how am I going to completely break these people? What's the core of my issue? The core of my issue is that the Jewish people were born Bnei Chorin. How am I going to enslave them? Slowly but surely, he picks on what he knows works for the Jews. He knows that they feel like outsiders. So he tells them, look, all the Egyptians are coming together. All the priests and everybody is going to be it. The president, the king, everyone's going to be building. The Jews got sucked in. Slowly but surely, everyone leaves. The Jews are stuck. He builds them. He breaks their spirit slowly but surely to the point when someone comes to tell them about freedom and they cannot hear Moshe mikotze ruach me'avodah kasha. What Paro is saying over here is something that he did. And achalek shalal. You know what? Paro understands. It's worthwhile to have the Jews build Pitom and Ramses. Let them build buildings that fall down. You know why? Because if they build buildings that fall down, it doesn't help you. But it will break the human to the point that eventually I'll be able to milk the cow forever. And they'll never be able to leave. And but for the miracles of God, we would still be Adayin, Anachnu, Ubnei Banenu, Meshubadim, Ayinu leParo, B'Mitzrayim. These are not empty words, but they also teach us in the reverse how to be a master of vanquishing a person's enemies in their day-to-day life. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Charanya.